over. I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. Why have I surfaced?
Wait till you see me in
This
action.
ought to tide you over. Our alliance binds me. Why have I surfaced? I'll make it so. Convince me. Spare the pleasantries. Our alliance binds me. This ought to tide you over. Aid us in our plight. Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. Convince me. This ought to tide you over. Spare the pleasantries by ebb and flow. Enable my revenge.
First blood.
This ought to tide you over. Aid us in our plight. I'll make it so. Enable my revenge. Our alliance binds me. This ought to tide you over. By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. Aid us in our plight. I'll make it so. This ought to tide you over. I'll make it so. By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. Convince me. I'll make it so. Bone scum. Why have I surfaced? Enable my revenge. By ebb and flow. I'll make it so. This ought to tide you over. Our alliance binds me. By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. This ought to tide you over. Our alliance binds me. Convince me. By ebb and flow. I'll make it so. This ought to tide you over. By ebb and flow. I'll make it so. This ought to tide you over. Backbone scum. I'll make it so. By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. This ought to tide you over. I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. Round them all. This ought to tide you over. Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. Spare the pleasantries. By ebb and flow. I'll make it so. This ought to tide you over. Bang, bang. I'll make it so. By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. By ebb and flow. Convince me. I'll make it so. This ought to tide. I have answered. Convince me. By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. By ebb and flow. This ought to tide you over. Our alliance binds me. By ebb and flow. Backbone scum. I'll make it so. Enable my revenge. Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. By ebb and flow.
Killing spree. Double kill.
Spare the pleasantries. Drown them all.
Our allies' town is
Flow. Land-born scum. I'll make it so. This ought to tide you over. Haters in our light.
Dominating.
This ought to tide you over. By ebb and flow. Convince me. Spare the pleasantries. This ought to tide you over. I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. This ought to tide you over. By ebb and flow. And spare. I'll make it so. By ebb and flow. Land-born scum. I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. By ebb and flow. I have our service. Fangs, air. This ought to tide you over. Spare the pleasantries. By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. Enable my within. Fangs, air. I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me.
Mega kill.
I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. Spare the pleasantries. This ought to tide you over. I'll make it so. By ebb and flow. Convince me. I'll make it so. Enable my revenge. Land-born scum. Aid us in our plight. Enable my revenge. Aid us in our plight. Convince me. Why have I service? Convince me. Why have I service? This ought to tide you over. Convince me.
Our
Why
allies'
have
town
I
needs help.
Our alliance binds and flow. Spare.
Our allies' town needs help.
Pleasantries. Why
Our
have
allies' town needs help.
convince me? Enable my revenge. I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. This ought to tide you over. I'll make it so. This ought to tide you over. Spare the pleasantries. Aid us in our plight. By ebb and flow. This ought to tide you over. I'll make it so. By ebb and flow. Convince me. I'll make it so. Aid us in our plight. Our alliance binds me. This ought to tide you over. Enable my revenge. Why have I service? Our alliance aid us in our plight. Spare pleasantries.
Unstoppable.
Convince me. Our alliance binds me.
Our allies' town is tough.
By ebb and flow. Why have I surfaced? Enable my revenge. Spare, spare the pleasantries. Our alliance binds me. Enable my revenge. This ought to tide you over. Our alliance binds me. This ought to tide you over. Convince. By ebb and flow. This ought to tide you over. I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. By ebb and flow. This ought to tide you over. By ebb and flow. And born scum. Hang air. I'll make it so. Why have I surfaced? By ebb and flow. This ought to tide you over. Spare the pleasantries. Why have I surfaced? I'll make it so. By ebb and flow. This ought to tide you over. I'll make it so. Spare the pleasantries. Our alliance binds me. By ebb and flow. Convince me. I'll make it so. Why have I surfaced? Our alliance binds me. Spare the pleasantries. So, tide you over. By ebb and flow. This ought to tide you over.
Killing spree.
I come to you now, Crown of the Town. By ebb and flow. Why have I surfaced? Enable my revenge. Alliance binds me. I'll make it so. By ebb and flow. Why have I surfaced? Aid us in our plight. Enable my revenge. Aid us in our plight. Enable my revenge. I'll make it so. Aid us in our plight. Our alliance binds me. By ebb and flow. Convince me. Enable my revenge. I'll make it so. By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. Spare the pleasantries. Our alliance binds me. Convince me. Enable my
Our
revenge.
allies' town needs help.
By ebb and flow. Aid us in our plight. Why have I surfaced? This ought to tide you over. Our alliance binds me. By ebb and flow. Enable my revenge. This ought to tide
Hello.
you over. I'll make
Welcome
it
to
so.
our village.
What is it?
Spare the pleasantries. Aid us in our plight. It's me. Aid you over. Aid us in our plight. Why have I surfaced? By ebb and flow. This ought to tide you over. Alliance binds me. By ebb and flow.
Our allies' town needs help.
Our alliance binds me.
Double kill.
Why have I surfaced? By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. This ought to tide you over. I'll make it so. This ought to tide you over. I'll make it so. Measure time. Spare the pleasantry. By ebb and flow. I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. Aid us in our plight. This ought to tide you over. Man-born scum. Enable my revenge. By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. Convince me. Aid us in our plight. Spare the pleasantries.
Hello.
Aid us in our plight. Enable my revenge. I'll make it so. Pleasantries. Enable my revenge. Spare. By ebb and flow. I'll make it so. Enable my revenge. Aid us in our plight. The ebb and flow.
Our allies' town needs help.
Convince me. Spare the pleasantries. Why have I surfaced? I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. By ebb and flow. I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. This ought to tide you over. Our alliance binds me. This ought to tide you over. Man-born scum. Drown them all. I'll make it so. This ought to tide you over. Pleasure power. Our alliance binds me. This ought to tide you over. Our alliance binds me. I'll make it
Double
so.
kill.
Our alliance binds me. By ebb and flow. I'll make it so. By ebb and
Our
flow.
allies' town needs help.
Aid us in our plight. Why have I surfaced? I'll make it so. Man-born scum. Spare the pleasantries. Enable my revenge. Aid us in our plight.
Killing spree.
Tide over. Enable my revenge. Our alliance binds me. Spare the pleasantries. By ebb so. This ought to tide you over. Ages in our light. Round them all. By ebb and flow. Hands round them all. Lights binds you. By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. Enable my revenge. By ebb and flow. I'll make it so. Why have I surfaced? Spare the pleasantries. By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. Aid us in our plight. This ought to tide you over. Convince me. Our
Welcome to our village.
binds me. This ought to tide you over. I'll make it so. My revenge. Convince. Spare the pleasantry. This ought to tide you over. Why have I surfaced? By ebb and flow. Aid us in our plight. Our alliance binds me. By ebb and flow. Convince me. I'll make it so. This ought to tide you over. Spare the pleasantry. Land-born scum. Aid us in our plight. By ebb and flow. I'll make it so. By ebb and flow. Dominators binds me. I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. Enable my revenge. Round them all. Spare the pleasantries. This ought to tide you over. Why have I surfaced? Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. This ought to tide you over. Hands, land-born scum. Our alliance binds me. Convince me. By ebb and flow. Enable my revenge. I'll make it so. By ebb and flow. Convince me. I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. Spare the pleasantries. Why have I surfaced? Our alliance binds me. This ought to tide you over. I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. This ought to tide you over. Our alliance binds me. By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. This ought to tide you over. By ebb and flow.
Killing spree. Mega kill. Unstoppable. Double kill. Wicked sick. I come to you now, crown
our plight. Revenge. I'll make it so. This ought to tide you over. By ebb and flow. This ought to tide you over. I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. By ebb and flow. Spare the pleasantries. Convince me.
Our allies' town needs help.
This ought to tide you over. In our plight. Alliance binds me. I'll make it so. Enable my revenge. I am unsurfaced. Convince me. I have unsurfaced. This ought to tide you over. I'll make it so. This ought to tide you over. By ebb and flow. Alliance binds me. This ought to tide you over. Spare the pleasantry. Ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. Aid us in our plight. This ought to tide you over. By ebb and flow. I'll make it so. I have pleasantry. By ebb and flow. I'll make it so. By ebb and flow. This ought to tide you over. By ebb
Our allies' town needs help.
I have unsurfaced. I'll make it so. Ebb and flow. Convince me. Aid us in our plight. I have unsurfaced. I'll make it so. By ebb and flow. Spare the pleasantry. Aid us in our plight. Enable my revenge.
Wait till you see me in action.
Aid us in our plight. This ought to tide you over. Enable my revenge. Spare the pleasantries. By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. Convince me. By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. Why have I surfaced? This ought to tide you over. Aid us in our plight. Enable my revenge. Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. Why have I surfaced? Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. Enable my surface. By ebb and flow. Aid us in our plight. Why have I surfaced? I'll make it so. Alliance binds me. Spare the pleasantries. This ought to tide you over. binds me by ebb and flow. I have thy service. Convince me. Round them all. Enable my revenge.
Our allies' town needs help.
By ebb and flow. I'll make it so. This ought to tide you over. By ebb and flow. Aid us.
Our allies' town needs help.
I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. Spare the pleasantries.
Greetings, my lord.
What is your wish?
Aid us in our plight. Trees. Aid us in our plight. Sought to tide you over. Binds me by ebb and flow. I'll make it so.
Allies' town needs help.
I come to you now. The time. Aid us in our plight. Convince me. This ought to tide you over. Fangs bared. Spare the pleasantries.
Our warriors have
Why
engaged
have
the
I
enemy.
surfaced? Spare the pleasantries. By ebb and flow. Convince me. Our alliance binds me. Enable my revenge. Land-born scum. Fangs bared. This ought to tide you over. Aid us in our life. Our alliance binds me. By ebb and flow. Spare the tree. This ought to tide you over. Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. Aid us in our plight. By ebb and flow. I'll make it so. By ebb and flow. I am service. It's ought to tide you over. Convince me. By ebb and flow. Alliance binds me. I'll make it so.
Double kill!
allies' town needs help.
Killing spree.
Convince me. Why have I surfaced? By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. By ebb and flow. Enable my revenge. This ought to tide you over. Aid us in our plight. Our alliance binds me. This ought to tide you over. I'll make it so. This ought to tide you over. Why have I surfaced? Enable my revenge. Convince me. I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. Aid us in our plight. Spare the pleasantries. My edge flows. This ought to tide you over. I have I surfaced. I'll make it so. By ebb and flow. I'll make it so. This ought to tide you over. By ebb and flow. Alliance binds me. Spare the pleasantries. This ought to tide you over. Enable my revenge.
Our allies' town needs help.
Spare the pleasantries. By ebb and flow. Alliance binds me. I'll make it so.
Our allies' town needs help.
Our alliance binds me. By ebb and flow. I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. Why have I surfaced? Spare the pleasantries. Round them all. Our alliance binds me. Aid us in our plight. This ought to tide you over. Convince me. Spare the pleasantries. Aid us in our plight. Our alliance binds me. Enable my revenge. Spare the pleasantries. Aid us in our plight. By ebb and flow. This ought to tide you over. Why have I surfaced? Spare the pleasantries. I'll make it so. Alliance binds me. Convince me. By ebb me. Spare the pleasantries. Enable my revenge. Convince me. By ebb and flow. Spare the pleasantries. Our alliance binds me. By ebb and flow. Enable my revenge. Binds me. Convince me. By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. By ebb and flow. This ought to tide you over. I'll make it so. This ought to tide you over. Spare the pleasantry. Enable my revenge. Our alliance binds me. Why have I surfaced? By ebb and flow. This ought to tide you over. Spare the pleasantries. By ebb and flow. Convince me. Enable my revenge. Our alliance binds me. Why have I surfaced? By ebb and flow. Convince me. Our alliance binds me. By ebb and flow.
Double kill.
Enable my revenge. I'll make it so.
Dominating.
Greetings, my lord.
By ebb and flow. Spare aid in our light. Alliance binds me. Why have I surfaced? Aid us in our plight. Spare the pleasantries. Convince me. Aid us in our plight. This ought to tide you over. By ebb and flow. Spare the pleasantries. Enable my revenge. Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. Convince me. Spare the pleasantries. Our alliance binds me. This ought to tide you over. Our alliance binds me. Spare the pleasantries. I'll make it so. Why have I surfaced? This ought to tide you over by ebb and flow. Spare the pleasantries. I'll make it so. By ebb and flow, I'll make it so. This ought to tide you over. Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. Aid us in our plight. By ebb and flow. This ought to tide you over. By ebb and flow. Convince me. This ought to tide you over. Enable my revenge. By ebb and flow, I'll make it so. Bang, spare. Spare the pleasantries. Convince me. Spare the pleasantries. Convince me. Aid us in our plight. Spare the pleasantries. By ebb. Aid us in... Convince me. Our alliance binds me. Enable my revenge. Spare the pleasantries. Why have I surfaced? Spare the pleasantries. Enable my revenge. Aid us in our plight. This ought to tide you over. Alliance binds me. I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. This ought to tide you over. I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. This ought to tide you over. By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. By ebb and flow.
Spree.
Our allies' town needs help.
I come to you now. None of the time. Spare the pleasantries. Why have I surfaced? Spare the pleasantries. This ought to tide you over. I'll make it so. By ebb and flow. Come treasure tower. This ought to tide you over. By ebb and flow. Enable my revenge. This ought to tide you over. By ebb and flow. Why have I service? I'll make it so. By ebb and flow. This ought to tide you over. Aid us in our plight. By ebb and flow. I'll make it so. Why have I surfaced? Convince me. Aid us in our plight. Binds me. I'll make it so. By ebb and flow. Aid us in our plight. Convince me. Why have I survived? Convince me. Our alliance binds me. Why have I surfaced? By ebb and flow. Convince me. This ought to tide you over. Why have I surfaced? I'll make it so. Alliance binds me. I'll make it so. Aid us in our plight. This ought to tide you over. Enable my revenge. I'll make it so. Spare the pleasantry. Enable my revenge. By ebb and flow. Our alliance binds me. By ebb and flow. Why have I served? I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me. I'll make it so. Aid us in our plight. This ought to tide you over. Enable my revenge. By ebb and flow. I'll make it so. Our alliance binds me.
Killing spree. Dominating. Double kill.
Aid us in our plight. By ebb and flow. Spare the pleasantries. Why have I surfaced? Spare the pleasantries. This ought to tide you over. I'll make it so. Why have I surfaced? Spare the pleasantries. Our alliance binds me.
Are you threatening me?
Convince me.